welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, let's talk about Jupiter. We just recently talked about Venus. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. There's interesting things about Venus that may or may not have to do with the second coming and the sign of the Son of Man and things like that. So go check that out. This time we're going to talk about Jupiter. I haven't been able to really shake this ever since this happened. You'll remember that back in September, Jupiter was the closest to Earth that it's been in 59 years. And not that that by itself was all too interesting, but it's when it happened. It happened at a very significant time from my point of view. Before I get into this, just want to let everybody know, yes, I have gotten on TikTok. I know that to some of you, TikTok is the devil, and that's fine. I understand why you feel that way. I'm doing this because there's some people I know that are LDS that are on here, and they say, you should get on here. There's a lot of LDS people, and this is a great way to advertise your channel and, you know, just do some different content. And I figured, yeah, I might as well. You see all these like homestead type of videos right here with like my cattle and chickens and stuff like that. Before I started doing YouTube, I took so many little shorts and I put them on Facebook and Instagram as stories, and I don't want them to go to waste. So for one thing, TikTok for me is good for that. So if you want to see more of my homestead and why my channel's name is Christian Homestead, it's because I have an actual homestead here in Kansas. But I'm also going to do these short videos like these two right here. I have two up, just short little thoughts, mostly like quotes, but probably going to do some other things. I'm going to play around with it. So, and I know it's owned by China. I know, especially after the Chinese balloon, is this a good idea? I'm just going to do it. You know, there's kind of two different opinions out there when it comes to how much we engage with the world. One is that we should like totally withdraw. That's like one extreme. The other extreme is that, no, we need to appease the world. We need to be part of it. We need to share the same values. And I don't think either one of those are correct. I think there needs to be moderation. We can't just hide from the world. And one reason why Satan is so successful is because he infiltrates the things that we watch. He mixes good and bad. But guess what? We can do the same thing. We don't have to be absent from TikTok or absent from YouTube or absent from different places. In fact, if we have a presence there, well, light is a lot stronger than dark, right? It casts out darkness. So I'd rather have other members of the church that are on TikTok have something to watch other than just stupid dancing videos and lip syncing and pranks and stuff like that. Maybe something that'll actually help them. So if you are on TikTok, I'm not encouraging you to do it, but if you're on it, just so you know, I'm on there now. Here I am, christian.homestead. That's my handle with the @ sign at the beginning. So I'm doing that, okay? All right, so Jupiter. Why did I think this was significant? Why am I talking about it again? Well, it's because I've learned a little bit more about Jupiter and Judaism and how Jews view Jupiter and what they call it, and I think it's interesting. So if we look at my second coming timeline and go back to September 25th, September 25th at sundown began Rosh Hashanah. This is the Jewish New Year, when they changed the calendar from one year to another. And it just so happens that Jupiter was the closest to Earth at 10 p.m. Eastern, just as Rosh Hashanah was getting underway. Okay. If you look at the Hebrew calendar right here, Rosh Hashanah is a 2-day event. Okay, so it was on the 26th and 27th, but it began at sundown on the 25th. All right. There were already a lot of like interesting things happening up until that point, right? Just a month before, there was that meteor that exploded over Salt Lake, which I think was significant. I feel like it was a sign. Okay. There were other things that were going on. We had, after that, we had the first ever election day, like the U.S. election day, a blood moon, lunar eclipse. there were like a lot of signs in the heavens going on, and there kind of still are. But this one amazed me because look, here's the article. Okay, this is the Jerusalem Post. Oh wait, no, sorry. The time is on this one, but let me just read what the Jerusalem Post says. They're not going to like cover anything religious, but one thing that they pointed out that I didn't see until today. This is according to NASA. It's a quote from NASA. Jupiter's closest approach to Earth rarely coincides with opposition, which means this year's views will be extraordinary. That's because opposition is when the planet is like opposite the sun, I believe, like from our point of view. So, like in other words, it's a lot brighter, right? So Jupiter, at a time when it was the closest to Earth in 59 years, and as Rosh Hashanah was beginning, was also very, very bright. Okay, I don't think that's coincidence. I don't. I don't. We've talked about how in Christianity, it's not really an official thing, but some view Jupiter as like a king planet because it's the biggest. It has the red spot, which people will be like, oh, that's kind of like Christ, when he was stabbed with the sword, when he was on the cross, and then with my stripes, you're healed. I, I don't. I mean, I think that's like those are good observations, and yeah, that could be kind of right. It's not really a doctrinal thing, but it all goes pretty well together. So I just kind of put that to the side of my mind. So that's kind of how I think some Christians view Jupiter, and it's the largest planet. It aside from the sun, it's the largest celestial body in our solar system. So that's saying something. It helps protect the Earth from rogue, just like asteroids and objects that could come our way. It kind of acts as like a vacuum because of its large gravity. So it's an important planet, right? And you could see how, yeah, maybe it kind of does represent Christ. Um, so anyway, okay, so you had this as this was happening, as Rosh Hashanah was beginning. Uh, it was not only the closest, but it was also brighter than normal. Okay, I think that's interesting. And don't forget that on Rosh Hashanah this last year, 2022, this Rosh Hashanah ended the sabbatical year. Every 7 years is a Sabbath year, a sabbatical year, called the Shemitah. Now, we covered recently that Jews there's a tradition that they believe that Messiah will make an appearance the year after a Shemitah. We also know that when Christ was crucified, he rose on Sunday after the Sabbath. And then that's when Christians started observing Sunday as the Sabbath. And so if Christ wanted to use this as like a symbol, like when he comes for the second coming, if he came during this year, it would really hit home, I think, to the Jews that, I was resurrected. This is my purpose. This was my mission, was to come here to enable the resurrection of the dead and just the atonement for sins as well. So I feel like this Hebrew year would be a good year for Christ to come for those reasons and how the Jews may look at it, because right now we're in the Sunday of years. Okay, so what else? What else? Okay, here on space.com, I just wanted to show you because I don't like to just say my information without giving a reference. So according to them, it says at 10 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, September 25th, Jupiter will make its closest approach to Earth since 1963. This is also interesting when you look at it because 1963 was just 4 years before Israel obtained and captured Jerusalem, and that was prophetically important. So the first time since Israel captured Jerusalem. That's interesting too. All right, so here it is. I put the links in the description of each video. Also, if you scroll over to the right to column R, this is where I put the sources for my information so that if you're ever looking at the tracker, you'll see where I got my information from. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so Hebrew word of the day. Jerusalem prayer team. So they call Jupiter Zedek. Okay, right here. Zedek. That's Jupiter. Let's read what it says. Jupiter, the largest of the solar system planets, called in Hebrew Zedek, means justice. Okay, Zedek means justice. The name Zedek appears in the Old Testament, but is not in reference to the planet, although this visible planet was known in the biblical era. It is mentioned in the New Testament in Hebrew as Bel, and it is and in its Roman name Jupiter. Jupiter was the Roman head god, the mythological parallel of the Greek god Zeus, father of gods and men, who was also in charge of law and order. Perhaps this is the reason for the Hebrew name Zedek, justice. It is somewhat embarrassing that Hebrew had to borrow words from pagan mythology, but facts are facts. Okay, so that's what it has here for this article about Zedek, so justice. But it's not just justice. Over here on Safaria.org, this this is kind of like, from what I can tell, kind of like the de facto main website that you would go to if you want to read Hebrew scriptures, the Talmud, stuff like that. And they have various other books, including this one called Guide for the Perplexed. This is part 3. And I have this up because it gives another definition for the word Zedek. The term Zedaka is derived from Zedek, which is righteousness. Okay? So justice and righteousness, those two things, that goes along with the idea of Christ, right? Isn't he the one that determines? I mean, he's the one that satisfies justice, but he brings mercy and justice together in order to make it so that we can return into the presence of the Father. Those that repent, that accept his terms, makes covenants with him. So he's essentially over that. He's the one that metes out justice. And of course, he is the epitome of righteousness, right? So Jupiter, okay? Jupiter is called in Hebrew justice or righteousness. The Romans viewed it as a king planet, right? And that makes sense. Okay. And again, why is that important? Well, I don't know that it is, but it could be important that a planet that represents Christ or has symbolism associated with it that you could also associate with Christ showed up at the start of the year, at the start of the Hebrew year, as we begin the Sunday of years. It's like Christ coming. Like, hey, it's a sign, potentially. Okay, so there's more. Okay, this is a neat article here. This is varchive.org. I'm going to read some of this. Zedek. The time of the patriarch Abraham witnessed unusual behavior by the planet Jupiter. The fact that Jupiter displayed a burst of activity exactly in the time of Abraham must not appear a coincidence. It was in the times of great global catastrophes, when the world was threatened with destruction. The religious reformers gained prominence, and contemporaries looked to a divine man for guidance. Zedek was the name of Jupiter, and we read that in the days of Abraham, the planet underwent some visible changes. Now, this is according to Judaism, right? This isn't like necessarily our doctrine, so that's where this would be coming from. Rabbinical sources relate that when Abraham was on an expedition against I don't know how to pronounce that, Cherdlaomer, king of Elam, and his allied kings, who had captured and despoiled Sodom and taken Abraham's nephew Lot into captivity, the star Zedek illuminated the night, whereby ensuring the expedition's success. You remember that story, right? Lot, his nephew, was kidnapped. Abraham led a campaign and defeated them, got Lot back, and then paid tithing to Melchizedek. So according to this tradition, Jupiter helped with illuminating the night, right? Okay, Quote, when he returned from his victory over CHARITIES and the kings who were allied with him, the book of Genesis relates, the king of Sodom came out to greet him, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was a priest of the Most High. Abraham ceded to Melchizedek the spoils of the war he had obtained in Syria from Chedorlaomer. Ancient Salem was a holy place, and Palestine was a holy land from gray antiquity. Uh, Whatever. Thus, in the documents of the Old Kingdom in Egypt, Palestine is named God's land, Toneter, or divine holy land. Abraham lived at the end of the Old Kingdom in Egypt, and documents from that time already referred to Palestine as God's land. But in early times, it was an astral god. Okay, here's the last part. The meaning of the name Melchizedek is Zedek is my king. So righteousness, justice is my king, right? Have you ever thought about that? I'm sure that some of you probably already knew the name, what Melchizedek means, but so when we're saying Melchizedek priesthood, it's like um, justice or righteousness is my king priesthood, or um, justice is my king priesthood, which I actually feel is very fitting because when you take upon yourself the priesthood, you're taking upon yourself the most powerful power that there is in the universe and in reality. And to wield that much power, you have to have righteousness as your guiding uh, king, your guiding principles, justice and righteousness. That's like the whole point of this life, is to see, uh, is justice and righteousness your king? Is that how you want to live your life? Because we can't have people after this life be given the same power that God has if they're not going to use it righteously. Here in this world, okay, any fool can have a child. Any just dummy off the street can have a child. But that's not how it works in the eternities. Okay? You have to be committed 100% to justice and to righteousness. So, this process that we're going through is extremely serious. And I think it's the perfect name, for that priesthood. We know that really the name of the priesthood is the whole the holy order after the Son of God. Um, Melchizedek priesthood, the holy priesthood after the order of the Son of God. Gosh, I feel like I should know this. It was first called the holy priesthood after the order of the Son of God. So that's the proper name for it. But as we know, to avoid repetition, we call it the Melchizedek priesthood. But that's still a very fitting name for it. It's a very fitting name. Okay, so anyway. Okay, so the meaning of the name Melchizedek is Zedek is my king. Righteousness is my king. Zedek, as said, is the same of the planet Jupiter, remaining so in the astronomy of the Jews in later ages. In the Talmud, Zedek refers to Jupiter. Zedek also has the meaning of righteousness or justice. It is beyond the scope of this work to find which of the meanings the name of the planet or the word in common usage preceded and which followed. Okay, and then we'll end right there. Okay, so that's I think that's really interesting. And think about it in the context of this being a sign for the second coming. If you have a planet that approaches our planet, the closest that it's been in 59 years, as the year is changing, and this planet represents justice and righteousness, wouldn't that be a very fitting event at the beginning of the year in which Christ comes? Now, I don't know that that's going to happen, but if it does, then that's really neat. that's how the year started, the Hebrew year. It's really, really neat, right? Because Earth is about to see justice. The wicked are about to be removed from off the face of the earth, right? And rights are going to be made wrong. Or oh my gosh. Jared, come on. If you're going to do a YouTube channel, learn how to talk. Learn how to talk. During the millennium, wrongs are going to be made right. Okay? Injustices, families are going to be corrected. You're going to have your final family that you're sealed to. Um, it's going to be a time when righteousness prevails. You know, it's still not going to be perfect. It's going to be a terrestrial condition, but it is going to be a time of righteousness. It is the Sabbath of, 1,000-year periods. This will be the seventh one. It'll be a Sabbath millennium. So, yeah, kicking it off. If it's Jupiter, that's pretty. It's pretty good. It's pretty perfect. All right, now, okay, so here we are. Um, Melchizedek. I just want to have this be complete. So the word for king is Melech. And I actually learned that pretty early on because on Duolingo, when you're studying Hebrew, for some reason they teach you that as one of the first words. So Melech is king. It says here the word Melech is mentioned over 1,000 times in the Bible, but only a handful of references pertain to the Lord God. Interestingly, the term Melech is a part of God's name in every Jewish prayer. All Hebrew prayers begin with, "Blessed are you, Lord, King of the universe." It makes us wonder why we only see a few characters or a few references to God as king. Many of the Hebrew prayers were inspired by the book of Psalms. Perhaps the poetic nature of this book inspired the ancient prayer writers to choose the name that is most frequent in Psalms to be attributed to our mighty God. Okay, so I'm not going to go over all that, but there you go. Um, Looking at this website, New World Encyclopedia, there's an entry for Melchizedek. It says here, while in Christianity, this priesthood is seen as the forerunner to the Christian New Covenant, superseding that of the Levite priesthood. So, and that's the stance of our church, right? Hypothetically, if Israel had been ready for it, uh, presumably they wouldn't have received the Aaronic priesthood or the Levitical priesthood. They would have had the Melchizedek priesthood. Because remember, Moses originally was going to deliver to them the higher law, but they weren't ready at that time. And of course, the Lord knew that was going to happen. It's not like it was a surprise. But they still went through the motions to be like, look, the nation is not ready at this time. We're going to live a lower law, the Mosaic law, and there's still going to be priesthood, but it's going to be the Aaronic priesthood, and it's going to be limited to the tribe of Levi. The sons of Aaron will be the priests or the Kohanim, and then the Levites will be the the helpers. They'll do the other tasks that the priests don't do. Okay, and then later in this article, it says it confirms that the planet Jupiter is called Zedek in Hebrew astronomy. And from a scholarly point of view, they're like, oh, well, maybe at the time of Melchizedek, they were like worshiping Jupiter, and so the two kind of got conflated, and so Melchizedek and his people may have been Jupiter worshipers, just whatever. We know that that's not true, but you can check out this article later if you want. There's this here. This is from Harvard, Hebrew names of the planets. I found a couple interesting things here I want to share. Introduction. As part of the International Year of Astronomy activities in Israel, a public competition was announced whereby the public was invited to propose Hebrew names for the planets Uranus and Neptune. All the other major planets have Hebrew names dating back even to biblical times. On the other hand, Uranus and Neptune, which were discovered at times when Hebrew was not considered a living language, are simply termed Uranus and Neptune. In this contribution, I will review the origins of the Hebrew names of the planets and their context, as well as some related notation. Appropriate historical consideration of the Hebrew language cannot ignore related languages, and thus I will also review the relevant Arabic notation. Number 2, the historical and linguistic background. A thorough account of Hebrew origins and history is definitely beyond the scope of this contribution, so I will give here a very brief description with only the very broad details accounting the major developments in the history of Hebrew. Hebrew is a member of the Semitic language family. Uh, the most widely spoken Semitic language today is Arabic, followed by Amharic, Tigrinya, and then Hebrew, usually considered the historic language of the Jews. Other important Semitic languages that played an important role in the history of the Middle East were Akkadian, Assyrian, Babylonian, and Aramaic. Most of them are now considered dead languages. Which, you guys, I feel like that's very unfortunate, and it rubs me wrong every single time I think about Aramaic, because that was the language that Christ spoke, and I wish I could just learn Hebrew and have that be what Christ spoke, but it's not. It's related. It's similar. These are related languages, but it's still a separate language. Okay, let's move on to the next page here. Astronomy and Judaism. Astral beliefs were prevalent among the nations that surrounded ancient Israelites. The Mesopotamian religions were completely astral, where each deity had a specific astronomical manifestation, and the motion of heavenly bodies was considered a practical means of the gods to communicate with man. The Jews oscillated among adopting characteristics of the surrounding beliefs of the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, and their likes, the strong Assyrian influence from Mesopotamia, and their own unique monotheistic culture. In this context, the main use of astronomy was for calendrical purposes, using methods developed by the Mesopotamians. However, astrology in its simplest form also infiltrated strongly to Jewish culture. During the Middle Ages, Jews participated in the Islamic astronomical endeavor, and many renowned Arab medieval astronomers were Jews. Okay, so, and this is what I found in Judaism, they don't have, it's not like they view the planets as like, oh, this represents Messiah, or this is that. They have the names, but it's mostly, like I said here, for purposes of the calendar. So is that to say that this isn't a sign? No, I think it still could be, but not like in a astronomical or in a astrological sense. People that give lots of meaning to the planets, like, oh yeah, this definitely means this. It symbolizes this. When it comes close, this happens. When it's in this constellation, this means that. It's not really like that. There may be some esoteric Jews that maybe give some meaning to those things, but it doesn't seem like that's the widespread belief. And then under section 4, this is interesting here. So the Hebrew word for star is kokav. Now, does that ring a bell to any of you? This is something I've known for a while, but it's appropriate to bring it up on the channel at some point. So the Hebrew word for star is kokav, while planet is referred to as a walking star. Curiously, Arabic uses the same root to refer to planet, kakab, while the word for star in Arabic is najm. The common root for the Hebrew star and the Arab planet probably originates from the Akkadian word kakabu for star. Now, instantly, when I saw that, it made me think about this, right? Haven't we all looked at this, and you read through the explanation, and you have these strange words? Some of them Egyptian, some of them Hebrew. So, for example, it says one day on Kolob, which sounds like Kokov, right? Similar, anyway. In Kolob, there's an L in the middle. but it's very similar. It's similar to Kokov. So 1 day in Kolob is equal to 1,000 years according to the measurement of this earth, which is called by the Egyptians. So here's an Egyptian word, Ja-o-e. So that's what they call, I guess, like 1,000-year period, right? And then stands next to Kolob, figure number 2, right here, this two-headed thing looking back and forward, called by the Egyptians Oliblish, right? I'm not going to go through like all these different things, but you get the idea. Grand keywords of the holy priesthood. Number 4, the Hebrew word Rauki Yang, signifying expanse or the firmament of the heavens. Also a numerical figure in Egyptian signifying 1,000. What's number 4? Where is it? Right here. This Horus-looking figure on this boat, this kind of like barge thing. So signifying 1,000, the firmament, which makes sense. It's like you're like on a boat, in the sky. What, I don't know, something like that. So the Hebrew word Raukiyeng, signifying expanse. Number 5 in Egyptian, Enish Go-ondash, which is one of the governing planets, and is said by the Egyptians to be the sun. And this is interesting here that they would call the sun a planet, right? Which, I'm not familiar with Egyptian astronomy or astrology, but it's interesting referring to the sun as a planet. Again, not everybody would read this the same way that I do, but if we go to my topics A through Z, I just want to bring this up again. Space. Okay, this is Brigham Young. He says, "Who can tell us of the inhabitants of this little planet that shines of an evening called the moon? When we view its face, we may see what is termed the man in the moon, and what some philosophers declare are the shadows of mountains. But these things are very vague and amount to nothing, and when you inquire about the inhabitants of that sphere, you find that most learned are as ignorant in regard to them as the most ignorant of their fellows. So it is with regard to the inhabitants of the sun. Do you think it is inhabited? I rather think it is. Do you think there's any life there? No question of it. It was not made in vain. It was made to give light to those who dwell upon it and to other planets, and so with this earth when it is celestialized. Every planet in its first rude organic state receives not the glory of God upon it, but is opaque. But when celestialized, every planet that God brings into existence is a body of light, but not till then. Christ is the light of this planet." So certain scholars will look at this and be like, this is nonsense. This was just a common belief at the time. There were many other people that thought that the sun was inhabited. And they think of it in the sense of like, oh, Brigham Young thought that there were like extraterrestrials that lived on the sun and the moon. And I do not think at all that that's what he's referring to here. I think he's speaking in a spiritual sense. I've said this multiple times on the channel. I'm thinking he's probably referring to people that are resurrected, people that are translated, so on and so forth. We know that the spirit world is here on earth. That's the location of the spirit world. When you die, you stay here on earth. But as to translated beings or people that are resurrected, where do they go? Do they go to the spirit world? I don't think so. So say that you're one of the people that were resurrected at the time that Christ was. Christ was the first, but we read in the New Testament there were others that were resurrected around the same time. And there could have been maybe some more since that time. It's not unreasonable to think that the angel Moroni was resurrected and maybe other Nephites and others. So if you don't go to the spirit world, that doesn't sound like a place where you would go if you're resurrected. You got to go somewhere. Would you go somewhere outside of this solar system? Maybe to Kolob itself? Yeah, maybe. Or what if, our local sun, our local star, the sun, what if it's a world where someone who's been resurrected to a celestial glory can temporarily reside until it's time to, you know, as you're waiting for the earth to become celestialized. Does that make sense? Because even during the millennium, we read that resurrected beings aren't going to be here the entire time. Not even Christ is going to be here the whole time. They're going to come when there's a necessity for it. But while they're gone, I would assume that probably a lot of them would just simply go to maybe the sun. And there's things that we can't see there with our instruments because we're in a telestial condition. So we probably can't see some things with our natural eyes. Now, I'm not going to push that too hard because I don't know. All I can do is like point to what Brigham Young said here, and it seems to go along with facsimile. What is this? Facsimile 2. Um, because look at this. When he's talking about light being given from the sun to the earth and other planets, um, and then governing and stuff like that. Let's just read this. It is called in Egyptian Anish Go-Undash. This is one of the governing planets also, and it is said by the Egyptians to be the sun, and to borrow its light from Kolob through the medium of Ke-Evan Rash, which is the grand key, or in other words, the governing power, which governs 15 other fixed planets or stars, as also Flois or the moon. And I think that that's an Egyptian word because in Hebrew, moon is a different word. The Earth and the Sun in their annual revolutions. This planet receives its power through the medium of Kli Flos Is S, or Ha Ko Kau Beim. The text right here doesn't really identify if these words are Egyptian or not. I'm assuming this first one is. And the second one, I'm assuming, and it is an assumption, this sounds Hebrew to me because ha is like the word the, like you add it to the word. So ha, kokaobeam. We already read back here that, where'd it go? Oh, well, I have it here. So here's another entry for Jerusalem prayer team. The first time a star is mentioned in the Bible, and most of the mentioning afterwards, is in its plural form, kokavim. Ko, ka. I'm not very good at the ka because it's like a guttural sound. Ko, ka, vim. Kokavim, right? So im, that makes it plural. Otherwise, it's just kokav, like this right here. See, kokav, kokavim. And that sounds very much like what's being said here in facsimile to ha kokavim. So it's like the stars, right? The stars. Ha is the kokavim, stars, the stars. This planet receives its power through the medium of the stars. And then it says right here, the stars represented by numbers 22 and 23. So here's 22, here's 23, right? The one in the middle is Kolob, and it even looks like Kolob here, as depicted by this strange being, is like giving its light, its power, whatever, to these two stars on either side, right? Hakokavim, the stars, the stars. Yeah, see, receiving its light from the revolutions of Kolob. And I feel like that just goes along with what Brigham Young was saying. Every planet in its first rude organic state receives not the glory of God upon it, but is opaque. But when celestialized, every planet that God brings into existence is a body of light, but not until then. And they're not made in vain. Stars are not made in vain. Brigham Young was of the opinion that they are inhabited, and I believe him. I do, in the sense that there's probably resurrected beings or possibly other things that live there, but not like extraterrestrials, like the way that people usually think of it. Okay, so anyway, sorry, it's interesting. It's interesting stuff, isn't it? So Kolob, it sounds like Kokov, so And we know that it's the first creation, nearest to the celestial or residence of God, first in government, the last pertaining to the measurement of time. Um, so yeah, okay. And then in Abraham 3, you get some of these names. You get some like different names, like a different name for the moon, Olea, which I don't believe that this is Hebrew. Again, I should have pulled it up, but moon, I believe, it's a different name. So I don't think that this is Egyptian. I don't know if this is like the pure Adamic language right here. God is speaking to Abraham, verse 13, and he said unto me, this is Shinaha or Shineha, which is the sun. So there's a different name for it. Um, and he said unto me, Kokab, which is star. So this seems like a Hebrew word. And he said unto me, Olea, which is moon. And he said unto me, Kokabim, which signifies stars. Now, I don't know if when Joseph Smith wrote this down, this is just how he spelled it. Maybe this is how he felt that it should be written down in English, or I don't know if maybe this is the Adamic language, and intentionally there's an AM at the end. Maybe it's supposed to be pronounced ko ka-u be'am. I don't know. Or maybe it's supposed to be ko ka-beam. I have no idea. Therefore, Kolob is the greatest of all the ko ka-beam, of all the stars, right? Kolob is the greatest of all the stars. Makes sense. Okay. Now, let's return to talking about Melchizedek, right? What's interesting is in Targum Jerusalem, Genesis 14, verse 18, it says, and Melchizedek, and in this, it's interesting because it separates into two words, king and righteousness. And Melchizedek, king of Jerusalem, who was Shem, who was the greatest priest of the Most High, or the great priest of the Most High. Now, what is the Targum? On this chat, this like AI chat thing here, you should check this out. It's kind of cool. It's called Chat GPT. You type in questions and it spits out answers, but it's generated by AI. You can't trust it. You have to like do your due diligence and find the authoritative source of whatever it says, but it's still kind of helpful. It can point you in the right direction. So according to this, it says Targum Jerusalem is an Aramaic translation and interpretation of the Hebrew Bible that was composed in the land of Israel around the 3rd or 4th century Common Era. It is also referred to as the Palestinian Targum. It is one of several ancient Aramaic versions of the Bible that were produced to help Jews understand the text in the common language of the time, since Hebrew had become a liturgical language, or like a language used by liturgy, the religious leaders. The Targum Jerusalem provides additional interpretations and amplifications of the text, sometimes incorporating Jewish mystical or midrashic interpretations. Yeah, the midrash has to do with deeper meanings, symbolism, and stuff like that. So it's below surface level, it's deeper. So the reason why I have this here is because I did a video a while ago about, is Melchizedek the same as Shem? If you don't know who Shem is, that was one of the 3 sons of Noah, and the one through whom Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob descended. There's reason to believe that maybe they are the same person, although we don't have an official stance on that in the church. But I just thought it was interesting to find that here in the Targum Jerusalem, that they just go and say, yep, Melchizedek and Shem, same person. When you look in the King James Version, it doesn't have that here. Okay, so it's only in the Targum. When we look at Shem, this is what comes up: name, son of Noah, and then it kind of talks about who he is. And then down here it says, in Latter-day Revelation, Shem is referred to as, quote unquote, the great high priest in D&C 138:41. says here, Noah, who gave warning of the flood, Shem, the great high priest, Abraham, the father of the faithful, Isaac, Jacob, and Moses, the great lawgiver of Israel. And then here it says, see also Melchizedek. So in the Bible dictionary, it doesn't outright say that Shem is Melchizedek, but that they could be the same person. And then here it doesn't really tie them together, but you know, he goes through King of Righteousness, right? We just covered that, King of Righteousness. Um, da, 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 da. And then in the Ensign, November 1973, there's an article here that discusses the possibility of Shem being Melchizedek, written by Alma E. Geige. And it's a really good article. I've already covered this in this video right here. So I'll link this in the description below. At the bottom, though, they mention Bruce R. McConkie's, what he said. It says, on the other hand, there's a case for there being two distinct personalities. Many persons believe D&C 8414 is proof that there are perhaps several generations between Melchizedek and Noah. The scripture says, quote, which Abraham received the priesthood from Melchizedek, who received it through the lineage of his fathers, even till Noah. So you see that, the lineage of his fathers until Noah, meaning that Noah would not be the father of Melchizedek. It seems to allude to there being generations between the two. And then it concludes, if it does turn out that Shem and Melchizedek are the same person, this scripture should prove to be no stumbling block, because it could be interpreted to mean that priesthood authority commenced with Adam and came through the fathers, even till Noah, and then to Shem. And so it's just kind of worded a little weird. Bruce R. McConkie does just outright say no. Because of this scripture, we know that there were generations between Noah and Melchizedek. So I don't know if that's just his opinion or revelation. Sometimes I don't really know why he says things so authoritatively. So it gets kind of tricky. I do listen to him. I don't just like discount what he says. I listen to him. Sometimes it's kind of hard. We just have to keep an open mind, I think, is when it comes down to it. You want to have everything just like nailed down perfectly, but sometimes you just can't. And I think that Bruce R. McConkie did know a lot. He's quoted a lot, both in church manuals as well as in general conference. So I think most of what he said was right, but there's certain little things like this where I don't know if he knew for sure. You know what I mean? So, and that's okay. It's fine. It's not a big deal. We'll find out in the end if Melchizedek and Shem are the same person. Now here's another thing. Now this is on the People's Talmud. This is the website produced by Rabbi Gerfine, the one that I talk to every other weekend, or every other week, I mean. And it's basically a thing that kind of breaks down the Talmud for people that are not familiar with the Talmud. And this is what it says here. Okay. The Talmud says that originally Shem, Noah's son, was supposed to have become the high priest of the whole world, but he lost that honor. The Talmud says this occurred when Abraham was returning from the War of the Kings. Shem, the king of Salem, came out to greet him. Parenthetically, the name Salem, in the first reference to Jerusalem, when it was still called by half of its name, Salem. When Shem blessed Abraham, he made a horrible mistake and first blessed Abraham, and only afterwards did he bless God. He got this backwards, and it cost him the priesthood. Abraham, a descendant of Shem, would later fulfill that post. So this is just an opinion of rabbis that wrote in the Talmud. It's found in Nedarim 32b. And you have to take that with a grain of salt. I don't think that matches up too well with our own doctrine. No one has said that. Is it true? I kind of doubt it. It doesn't seem right to me, but anyway, that's what it says in the Talmud, and that's how Jews would how they would look at it. That Shem essentially is Melchizedek, and he would have been like the Abraham, I think. I think that's what I get out of this, is that they think, oh, he would have been the Abraham, but it passed on down to Abraham, and then he had that honor. I don't think that's right, though. Um, I looked on Israel 365, and I also looked on the Yeshiva World to see if they did any articles about Jupiter when it was close to Earth, and they didn't. So I don't think that the Jews have any strong feelings about this event. There's one other thing I found. This is called Tradition Online, and it talks a little bit here about the conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. And it says here that basically a long time ago, okay, I'll just read it. It says Solomon ibn Gabriel and Abraham bar Yeha believed that it was possible to link the conjunctions of Saturn and Jupiter to a calculation of the arrival of the Messiah. And I'm just going to read that. So this is not like the prevailing opinion in Judaism, but there were some that thought, oh, a conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter could mean that Messiah is coming. We have read a lot of articles on Israel 365 where they look at different astronomical events, like the comet that just came by Earth, the 50,000-year comet, where we were wondering if if it could be the sign of the Son of Man, if it's actually Christ and it's time. Well, they do look at a lot of things like that and see it as like, a forerunning or a sign that Messiah is coming. Why would we care that Jews think that Messiah is, just around the corner? Well, like I've said in other videos, it's because the Lord is probably preparing their minds for the second coming. Although they view it as, oh, it's going to be the Messiah, they're still getting in that mode of receiving Messiah. So I think that it's maybe important for us to watch how the Lord may be working among them, right? So Jupiter. Um, don't know really what to think, other than I feel like it's very unlikely that it would have showed up exactly or right as, um, let's go back to the timeline, right as Rosh Hashanah is starting. And it's not just any Rosh Hashanah, it's the beginning of the new 7-year cycle, the Sunday of years. And that, not only that, but it was bright, unusually bright. I don't think that's coincidence. And the only thing I can really draw from the symbolism is that um, it seems appropriate that Jupiter is called Zedek, which means justice and righteousness. And if the second coming does happen in this Hebrew year, then it's perfect, because we're about to enter a period, a 1,000-year period of righteousness and justice. So, just let me know what you think in the comments below. Really quick, I wanted to give you an update on the Book of Mormon challenge, to give the Book of Mormon. So far, we have a total of 4,158 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been sent out. I'm hoping that we can get this above 5,000. I'd like to get it to 10,000. I'm gonna keep doing this challenge until every single subscriber has given out 1,000 copies of the Book of Mormon. So we got a long ways to go. Only 325 of you have participated in this, and that's fine. But I'm hoping that this number will go dramatically up. And so far, we have 2 more people that have received missionaries. So we have 11 total reported missionary contacts with these people that we're giving the Book of Mormon to. So if you share the Book of Mormon, just let me know how you did it. It can be in person, it can be mail, it can be text or email. If you go to your Gospel Library app and click on Scriptures, at the top you'll see a share button, which it's an app that's specifically for the Book of Mormon. It's for the Book of Mormon. It's just simplified for people that may investigate the church. You click on share and it gives you a link to where you can text it, or you can email it, or you can put it in a direct message on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So just put in the comments. Don't do a long comment. Just do a simple comment. Let me know that you shared it, and then I'll update the tracker. I'll put your name over here, or you can do it anonymously, and I'll put you under the anonymous row right here. 49 anonymous shares. And yeah, and as you share, you will encourage others to do the same thing. I don't mind keeping track of it. It is a little bit hard, but I think it's a good thing and it's worthwhile. So please share a copy of the Book of Mormon and let's make something incredible happen together. All right, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.